The small Ohio town of Maplewood had always been quiet, the kind of place where neighbors waved over white picket fences and children played until the streetlights flickered on. But tonight, that peace shattered. Officer Daniel Harris's phone buzzed insistently, its screen flashing red with the call that would turn his world upside down. His heart sank as he listened, each word making his pulse pound faster. "Your son, Liam, he's missing. Last seen near Willow Creek Park." Time slowed as he raced through the dark streets, sirens slicing through the stillness, his mind replaying every moment from the morning, Liam eating breakfast, the way he hugged his mom goodbye, the laughter that had once filled the house. Now there was nothing but panic and uncertainty. The park loomed ahead, an expanse of trees whose shadows seemed to stretch like dark fingers across the ground. Police cars formed a perimeter while officers shouted into radios, flashlights bobbing like fireflies in the dim evening. Parents huddled with children nearby, whispering prayers and sharing terrified glances. Daniel's uniform felt heavier than ever, each step a mixture of training and raw fear. He tried to focus, scanning the wooded area with the beam of his flashlight. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made him flinch. Search dogs had been called, volunteers gathered, and yet there was no trace of Liam. Panic clawed at him, but he forced himself to remain composed. His fellow officers looked to him for leadership, for reassurance that someone had a plan. Inside, however, he felt like a father trapped in a nightmare, powerless. Minutes stretched into an agonizing hour. Parents whispered encouragements, some weeping openly, others packing, unable to bear the silence that hung over the park. Daniel crouched, tracing the ground with his hand, searching for footprints, any sign that could lead them to his son. Then, in the chaos of lights, radios, and anxious voices, he noticed a small figure stepping forward, a child unlike any he had seen in the crowd. She was tiny, no older than 8, with sandy brown hair falling into her wide, determined eyes. She wore scuffed sneakers and a faded jacket, clutching something tightly in her small hands. The crowd of adults parted instinctively, sensing that this girl did not belong in the ordinary panic. Daniel felt his chest tighten as she approached, her gaze locked onto him. "Officer Harris," she called softly, her voice strangely calm amid the chaos. He knelt, keeping his eyes level with hers. "Yes, do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, but I can help." Her hands trembled slightly, revealing the leash she clutched. Attached was a scruffy brown and black dog, its fur matted and eyes alert, tail stiff but ready. Daniel blinked, confusion mixing with hope. "My dog," the girl said, pointing to the mutt. "He can find your son." The words hit him like a punch. He blinked, not sure if he had heard correctly. A random child, a mutt, can find my son. Officers exchanged skeptical glances. Some whispered about protocol, liability, and safety. Yet Daniel's gut screamed that they had no other options. The official search teams were exhausted, the sun fatting fast, and Liam's last known location, a dense patch of woods, was unforgiving. The girl knelt, tightening her grip on the leash. "He's good at finding people, really good, you'll see." Her voice carried a strange confidence, a certainty that defied logic. Daniel glanced down at the dog. Its ears perked, nose twitching, tail swaying with anticipation. There was something in its posture, the intense focus in its eyes, that made him pause. Against all reason, against every rule he had been trained to follow, he felt hope, faint but undeniable. "All right," Daniel said finally, his voice a whisper to himself more than anyone else. "We'll try." The girl's face lit up and she nodded once. The dog barked softly, a sound that seemed almost like acknowledgement. Daniel felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him. Around them, the other officers shifted uneasily, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment unfold. He unclipped the dog's leash and handed it to the girl. The dog surged forward instantly, sniffing the air with an intensity that sent chills down Daniel's spine. "Stay close," he instructed, and the girl nodded, stepping into the tree line without hesitation. Daniel's heart pounded as he followed, flashlight cutting through the gloom, every sense heightened to the maximum. The park's familiar paths had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Twigs cracked underfoot, leaves rustled with unseen movement, and the night seemed to close in around them. Every second without a sighting of Liam felt like eternity. Daniel's mind raced with scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. But through it all, the girl and her dog moved with unwavering focus, almost as if they were guided by something invisible. Suddenly the dog paused, nose to the ground, body tense, ears alert. The girl leaned forward slightly, whispering, "He's close." Daniel's stomach twisted. Was this luck, instinct, or something else entirely? Then from deeper in the woods he heard it, a faint, distant sound that made his chest seize. A cry, a small, terrified cry. "Liam," he called, his voice cracking despite himself. The dog barked sharply as if responding and bolted forward. The girl ran after it, leaping over roots and brush, fearless and determined. Daniel followed, heart hammering, lungs burning, adrenaline surging through him. The shadows of the trees seemed to stretch endlessly, the night alive with danger and uncertainty. And somewhere ahead, somewhere in the darkness, his son was waiting. The forest pressed in around them, the dense trees blotting out the last traces of twilight. Daniel's flashlight struggled to cut through the growing darkness, painting long, flickering shadows across twisted roots and fallen leaves. The girl and her dog were ahead, moving with uncanny confidence, weaving between trees and leaping over undergrowth as though they had traversed this terrain 1,000 times. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears, each breath ragged, each heartbeat a drum of fear and hope. Around them the forest seemed to hold its breath. Crickets were silent and even the wind had hushed. Officers in the search party tried to keep pace, shouting warnings when branches scratched at their faces or when the uneven ground threatened to send them tumbling. But the girl's focus never wavered. She crouched, sniffed the air, and murmured to the dog, which responded instantly, ears twitching, nose scanning, paws padding lightly over moss-covered roots. Daniel's rational mind rebelled. This is absurd, he thought. A child and an untrained dog. This isn't protocol. This isn't how missing child searches are supposed to happen. Yet, as the seconds ticked by and the forest swallowed them deeper into shadows, hope pushed reason aside. Every instinct, every memory of Liam's laughter and small hands reaching for his father drove Daniel forward. "Officer Harris," the girl said suddenly, her voice firm, "he's picking up the trail." Her eyes, wide and earnest, locked on him. "We have to follow." Daniel swallowed hard. "He's just a dog," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. But the girl's gaze held an unspoken promise, and the dog, tail stiff with anticipation, let out a low growl as if confirming her words. A rustling ahead made Daniel freeze. Shadows shifted as something scuttled through the underbrush. He shone his flashlight, revealing a pair of glowing eyes, just a raccoon, but his heart skipped anyway. Each noise, each shadow was a potential threat, a reminder of what they were risking. Officers shouted from behind, warning them to stay together, but Daniel ignored them. The forest was narrow, the paths tangled, and every second lost was precious. The dog suddenly stopped, nose quivering in the soil. Its low growl vibrated in the air, a sound that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. The girl whispered something to the dog, barely audible, and it stiffened further before bounding forward again. Daniel's breath caught. How could this little dog know? How could this child trust so completely in something no one else had faith in? Minutes crawled like hours. The forest grew darker, the ground slick with mud from recent rains. The girl paused at a small clearing, her eyes scanning the dim horizon. "I think I see him," she said softly, pointing to a faint movement far ahead. Daniel squinted. All he saw were shadows, trees, and the occasional glimmer of moonlight reflecting on wet leaves. "Are you sure?" he asked, though he knew the answer wouldn't matter. The girl nodded, a grim determination in her eyes. "He's scared, but he's there." A scream tore through the night, not Daniel, not the child, but a human sound that froze everyone in place. It was sudden, shrill, and terrifyingly close. The girl's dog barked sharply, ears back, hackles raised, signaling danger. Daniel surged forward, heart hammering, flashlight beam bouncing wildly across the uneven forest floor. Suddenly they reached the edge of a small ravine. The dog stopped abruptly, growling low and urgent. Daniel's stomach dropped. Below, darkness swallowed the ground entirely, the slope slick with mud and loose rocks. The faint sound of whimpering echoed from somewhere below. Liam, his son. The girl knelt and whispered to the dog, her voice calm but commanding. "Careful, careful now." The dog's ears twitched. It moved forward cautiously, paw by paw, nose to the ground. Daniel's heart lurched. No trained rescue dog could navigate this blind in the dark without falling, and yet here it goes. He tried to follow but had to stop at the edge. The slope was too steep, too treacherous for him to descend without risking a fall. "Stay there," he called. "Hold on." But the girl simply crouched lower, letting the leash slip through her small hands, trusting the dog to find its way. From below, a faint cry pierced the night again. Daniel recognized it instantly, his son. Liam's voice was tiny, panicked, but unmistakable. Relief and fear collided violently in Daniel's chest. "Hang on, buddy. Daddy, coming," he shouted, his voice breaking. The dog's growl intensified, alerting Daniel to movement further down. Small branches snapped, the ground shivering under shifting weight. And then, a shadow, something moving between rocks and roots, barely visible, paused. The dog barked sharply and darted forward. Liam's cry grew louder, closer, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The girl's face was pale, but she stood firm. "He won't let anything happen to him," she whispered. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. She wasn't just trusting the dog, she was certain. And somehow, instinctively, Daniel began to trust too. A sudden rustle behind them made Daniel spin. One of the other officers had arrived at the ravine's edge, flashlight shining wildly across the ground. "Stay back. You can't," he started, but Daniel cut him off, desperation overriding protocol. "My son is down there. We don't have time." The officer froze, realizing the gravity. Every second mattered. The dog barked again, urgent and commanding, and Daniel felt the pull of hope stronger than fear. With careful, tense steps, he began descending the steep slope, hand over hand, gripping roots and rocks, every muscle straining. Below, the dog paused beside a rock, its body rigid, eyes fixed on a narrow gap where Liam's small form huddled, knees to chest, shivering. The boy's face was streaked with dirt and tears, and yet there was a glimmer of recognition when he saw the dog. Relief surged through Daniel, threatening to overwhelm him entirely. "Liam," he cried, sliding down the last few feet to reach him. Liam scrambled forward instinctively, arms wrapping around his father. The dog nuzzled between them, tail wagging cautiously, as if checking to make sure this reunion was safe. Daniel held his son tightly, shaking, tears streaking his face. It's okay, buddy. You're safe now." But even in that moment, the forest around them remained ominous, the darkness unbroken, as if reminding them that danger was never far away. Then the dog growled low and turned, ears pointed toward the shadows. Daniel tensed. Something wasn't right. From deeper in the underbrush, a faint sound, like something shifting, echoed. The dog barked sharply, hackles raised, and the girl's voice called from above, "Watch out." Daniel's stomach sank. Whatever was out there in the dark, it wasn't done yet. The forest seemed alive with whispers, shadows shifting like silent watchers as Daniel crouched over Liam, his son trembling in his arms. The dog stood alert, body stiff, ears pricked toward the darkness ahead. The girl, barely visible through the dim light, peered down from the edge of the ravine, her small frame tense but resolute. Daniel's heart pounded, every instinct screamed caution, but the urgency of the moment left no room for hesitation. "I'll follow you," Daniel said to the girl, voice trembling slightly though he tried to mask it. He scanned the steep slope, rocks slick from rain, roots jutting out like jagged teeth. Any misstep could mean disaster. Yet the dog had already begun moving forward, paws sure on the uneven terrain, tail stiff but controlled, nose low to the ground, scanning every scent. Liam clung to Daniel's chest, eyes wide, tears streaked across his dirt-smudged cheeks. "Daddy, I'm scared," he whispered, voice quivering. Daniel pressed a gentle kiss to the top of his son's head, inhaling the scent of wet grass and fear. "I know, buddy, I know. We'll be okay, I promise." But even as he spoke, the forest seemed to close in around them, ominous and unrelenting. The girl knelt and whispered to the dog, a series of soft commands that Daniel couldn't understand. The dog's ears twitched, and it bounded forward with renewed purpose, leading them down a narrow, almost invisible path. Daniel swallowed hard, gripping his son tightly, navigating the treacherous descent one careful step at a time. Every footfall on loose rocks sent tremors up his legs, and his muscles screamed with exertion, yet he pressed on, driven by desperation and hope. Behind them, the faint sounds of the other officers' shouts and flashlights clashing against trees created a chaotic backdrop. They were too far ahead for anyone to reach them quickly. Daniel realized this was now a race against time. One misstep could leave them stranded in the dark with a panicked child. Suddenly the dog stopped abruptly, tail stiff, hackles raised, ears forward. It barked sharply, low and urgent, then crouched slightly, nose twitching. The girl whispered, "Something here." Her voice was steady, eerily calm for a child. Daniel's stomach clenched. Danger was close, very close. He glanced around, dense trees, thick underbrush, shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Every instinct told him to retreat, to wait for backup. But Liam's small body in his arms, the terror etched into his face, left no room for hesitation. Daniel nodded at the girl. "Go ahead," he said, voice tight. "We follow your lead." The dog crept forward, sniffing the ground, growling low as it moved. The girl followed, careful and deliberate, her small hands brushing against branches, guiding the dog. Daniel descended slowly, muscles taut, eyes scanning every shadow. The forest floor was uneven, slick with mud, and branches snagged at his clothes. But Liam clung to him, and he refused to let anything happen to his son. They reached a small clearing where the trees opened slightly, revealing a narrow ravine below. The dog's body stiffened, tail straight, as it sniffed the edge of the slope. Liam whimpered, instinctively pressing closer to his father. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He could see a faint outline at the bottom, rocks, roots, and the faint glow of his flashlight's reflection on wet earth. Something or someone was down there. The girl crouched at the edge and whispered again, "We have to go, he won't wait." Daniel felt the weight of the moment crush him. He could call for backup, wait for ropes, for trained personnel, but every second counted. Liam's small cries echoed faintly from below, a reminder that waiting could cost him his son. With a deep breath, Daniel carefully began the descent. Every step was deliberate, hands gripping roots, feet testing rocks for stability. The girl guided the dog with soft murmurs, and it responded immediately, carefully navigating the slope. Daniel's muscles burned, sweat stinging his eyes, but fear and determination drove him forward. Halfway down, a branch snapped beneath his foot, sending a shower of leaves and twigs scattering. Liam cried out, startled, and Daniel tightened his hold. "I've got you, buddy. I won't let go," he reassured him, though doubt flickered in his mind. Could they make it down safely? Could they trust a child and a stray dog in this precarious terrain? The dog barked sharply and darted forward, halting near a cluster of rocks. Daniel squinted. There, huddled against a jagged stone, was Liam's small form. Relief and fear collided in his chest. "Liam!" he cried, voice shaking as he hurried toward him. Liam scrambled forward instinctively, arms wrapping around his father's neck. Daniel's heart ached with relief, tears streaming down his face. It's okay. I've got you." The dog pressed close, sniffing Liam, tail wagging cautiously, as if ensuring that the boy was truly safe. But just as relief washed over him, Daniel noticed something that made his stomach drop. Above them, loose rocks and soil teetered precariously on the slope. The faintest shift in weight, a small tremor in the ground, could trigger a dangerous slide. The forest seemed to hold its breath, silence pressing in like a warning. The girl called down softly, "Careful, it's not stable." Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see the tension in her small frame. He nodded, glancing up. The realization hit him hard. They were still in danger. They had found Liam, yes, but the forest wasn't done testing them yet. Suddenly, a small cascade of pebbles tumbled down the slope, bouncing near Daniel's boots. The dog growled, ears flat, and Liam pressed tighter against his chest. Daniel's mind raced. One wrong move and the rocks could tumble further, threatening to bury them. He motioned for Liam to stay still and shifted his weight carefully. "We move slowly," he instructed, voice low but firm. The dog barked once, as if acknowledging the plan, and Daniel began the careful ascent back toward a more stable section of the slope. Every movement required precision, every breath measured. The forest seemed to close in around them, shadows dancing in the dim light, the weight of danger pressing from every side. Daniel's heart hammered, adrenaline coursing through his veins, but the sight of his son safe in his arms steeled his resolve. They could not fail now. As they navigated the treacherous slope, a sudden noise, a branch snapping sharply, echoed nearby. The dog barked aggressively, hackles raised, signaling that something unseen was approaching. Daniel froze, Liam clinging to him, the girl's small voice echoing faintly from above. "Be ready." Fear, hope, and determination collided within him. Every instinct screamed to act, every muscle tensed for danger. And in that suspended moment, Daniel realized that the choice before him was clear. Trust the girl and her dog, follow them into the unknown, or risk losing his son forever. With a deep, steadying breath, he made his decision. "We go," he whispered. And together they pressed forward into the shadows, into the unknown, every step heavy with tension, every heartbeat a drum of fear and hope. The forest waited silently, watching, as the trio, father, son, child, and dog, ventured deeper into the darkness. And somewhere ahead, in the unseen depths of the ravine, danger waited as well, silent but inevitable. The air grew colder as Daniel, clutching Liam tightly, pressed forward with the girl leading the dog. Each step was measured, every movement deliberate, as the uneven forest floor threatened to betray them. Mud clung to their boots, roots snagged their clothes, and the darkness seemed to press in from every angle. The flashlight in Daniel's hand flickered intermittently, casting long, warped shadows that danced like specters across the trunks of ancient trees. Liam trembled against his chest, and Daniel's heart ached at the boy's tiny form, dirt smudging his cheeks, eyes wide with fear. The dog paused suddenly, nose quivering, tail stiff, ears erect. Its low growl reverberated in the silent woods, a warning that froze Daniel mid-step. The girl whispered softly, almost as if speaking to herself, "He's here. He's close." Daniel's pulse raced. Every fiber of his being wanted to run, to retreat to safety with Liam, but he knew that the dog was guiding them. Hope flickered tenuously at the edge of panic. He followed the girl as she knelt, murmuring soft, precise instructions to the dog. The animal moved in small, calculated steps, sniffing the ground, circling, then bounding forward again. And then something caught Daniel's eye. A small sneaker partially hidden beneath thorny branches, mud-streaked and torn at the edges. His stomach dropped. He froze, his breath caught. He recognized it immediately: Liam. He dropped to his knees, tears welling in his eyes, heart hammering. "Liam," he whispered, barely daring to hope. The boy looked up at him, trembling, and he realized how close they had come to the edge of despair. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for the sneaker, lifting it gently as if it were fragile glass. The dog barked sharply, tugging at the girl's hand, signaling that this was not the end, only the first step. Daniel swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. He glanced around at the darkness ahead, thick trees and underbrush obscuring what lay beyond. "We're close, Liam," he said softly, though uncertainty clawed at him. The girl nodded, eyes bright with determination. "He's scared, but he's alive. Follow him." She gestured to the dog, whose body stiffened in anticipation. Daniel exhaled slowly, knowing he had no choice but to trust them. With careful steps, they advanced. The dog moved ahead, nose low, ears pricked. Daniel's grip on Liam tightened. Every branch that snapped underfoot, every rustle of leaves made his heart leap into his throat. They descended a narrow slope, slick with mud, the forest floor treacherous and unpredictable. Suddenly the dog barked loudly, ears flat against its head, hackles raised. Daniel froze. Up ahead, partially obscured by thick ferns, he glimpsed a narrow path leading into a deeper ravine. Shadows danced along the edges and a chill ran down his spine. Something about the path felt dangerous, but he couldn't hesitate. Not now, not with Liam. The girl leaned forward, whispering softly, "Careful, it's steep, but we have to go." Daniel nodded, adjusting Liam in his arms, stepping lightly, testing every foothold. The dog led the way, nimble and precise, bounding over roots and rocks as though it knew exactly where to go. Then a faint sound reached Daniel's ears, a whimper almost drowned by the wind and rustling leaves. His heart lurched. Liam's voice. He couldn't be sure. "Liam," he called, voice tight, cracking with emotion. The whimper grew louder, confirming his worst fears and igniting hope at the same time. The girl motioned to a cluster of rocks partially hidden in the darkness. The dog darted ahead, sniffing, circling, and finally sitting rigidly beside a narrow crevice. Daniel's stomach churned as he peered into the shadows. His breath caught. There, wedged between rocks, was a small form huddled in fear. "Liam!" Daniel shouted again, rushing forward as carefully as the treacherous terrain allowed. The boy's eyes widened, relief and terror mingling as he recognized his father. He scrambled slightly, but the rocks and mud threatened to send him tumbling. Daniel reached down, gripping his son's small frame, holding him tight against his chest. "It's okay, buddy. I've got you. You're safe now," he whispered, though every instinct screamed that the danger was far from over. The dog stayed close, nuzzling Liam, tail wagging cautiously as if ensuring the boy was truly safe. But then the girl's voice cut sharply through the forest. "Watch out." Daniel glanced up, heart lurching. Loose rocks perched above them trembled precariously, threatening to tumble. One wrong move, one slip could trigger a slide. He froze for a moment, calculating the safest path. The dog barked again, ears flat, sensing the instability, while Liam clutched him tightly, small body trembling. The forest, once silent, seemed to hold its breath. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant call of an owl, was amplified in the tense silence. Daniel's mind raced, searching for the next step, trying to navigate the deadly terrain with his son in his arms. "Step slowly," he instructed, voice low but firm. The girl murmured to the dog, guiding it to stay close, and it responded immediately, careful and deliberate. Together they began to move, one cautious step at a time, Daniel leading Liam through the treacherous path. Then a sudden movement, a rock shifting unexpectedly, made Daniel's heart stop. The dog barked sharply, lunging forward to stabilize the path with its body, a protective shield between the father and the unseen danger. Daniel froze, holding Liam tight as more debris tumbled down the slope. The girl called down urgently, "We're almost there. Just a little further." Daniel's muscles burned with exertion, sweat stinging his eyes, but he pressed on, fueled by desperation and the sight of his son's face. Finally, they reached a narrow, more stable ledge. Liam's trembling subsided slightly, his small hands clutching Daniel's uniform. The dog sat close, watching the forest with unwavering vigilance, ears twitching at every sound. The girl joined them, small and determined, her eyes scanning the darkness. Daniel looked at the dog, gratitude and awe surging through him. How did this little dog know? He wondered. How did this child trust so completely? He pressed a hand to Liam's back, whispering reassurance. But even as relief began to wash over him, the forest reminded him that the night was far from over. A faint rustling echoed from deeper within the trees. The dog's body stiffened, growl low and warning. Daniel's stomach clenched. Danger was still close. The shadows of the forest seemed to shift with intent, and the path ahead remained uncertain. Daniel realized that finding Liam had been only the first step. The forest had more tests, more obstacles, more perils waiting in the darkness. And somewhere ahead, guided by a scruffy dog and a fearless child, they would have to confront them all. The night pressed down like a living weight, full of unseen threats and the promise of salvation. Every step forward would demand courage, trust, and unflinching determination. And the trio, father, son, child, and dog, stood at the edge of uncertainty, the first clues of Liam's survival discovered, yet knowing the true danger had only just begun. The ledge they had reached was narrow, barely wide enough for Daniel to keep a secure hold on Liam. The forest around them seemed to breathe, shadows stretching, twisting, whispering threats that the mind could almost imagine. Above, the trees swayed gently in the cold wind, their branches scratching against each other like skeletal fingers, while the moon cast ghostly silver streaks across the forest floor. Every sound, the distant call of an owl, the snap of twigs underfoot, the low growl of the dog, seemed magnified in the oppressive silence of the ravine. The dog crouched low, ears forward, tail rigid, nose quivering. It had stopped at the edge of a steep drop, the shadowed depth swallowing the ground below. Daniel felt his stomach lurch. He knew instinctively that one misstep here could spell disaster. The slope beneath them was slick with mud, loose rocks perched dangerously, and the wind whispered threats that only the anxious mind could hear. The girl knelt beside the dog, her small hands gripping its leash lightly. "He's scared," she whispered. Daniel's heart clenched. She was right. The dog was tense, cautious, aware of danger far beyond what they could see. And so was Liam, whose small hands gripped Daniel's shirt as if afraid the father might vanish. Daniel exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He had faced danger before in the line of duty, but nothing compared to this. A child in peril, another child guiding them through darkness, and a dog leading them like a trained rescue animal against all odds. He looked at the dog and the girl, the odd pair that had somehow become their guide, their protector. "Okay," he said carefully, voice low but steady. "We follow you." Slowly. The dog sniffed the ground, then took a tentative step forward, paws finding precarious footing among the rocks and mud. The girl encouraged it in a series of soft whispers, her words almost inaudible but filled with certainty. Daniel adjusted Liam in his arms, lowering his body slightly, testing every foothold, every branch, every inch of terrain before committing his weight. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them, the silence broken only by the dog's careful steps and the occasional whimper from Liam. Suddenly, a rock dislodged from the slope above them, clattering down into the darkness with a metallic crack. Daniel froze, his heart in his throat. The dog barked sharply, ears flat, hackles raised. Liam gasped, clutching Daniel tighter. The girl called out, "Move slowly." Her voice, though soft, carried authority. Daniel nodded and took another careful step, muscles taut, every nerve screaming caution. The dog paused at a small indentation in the slope, sniffing intensely. It barked again, low and urgent, signaling that Liam's small form was just ahead, wedged between rocks, alive but vulnerable. Daniel's chest ached with relief, yet fear surged immediately after. The ground beneath them groaned subtly, a warning that the slope was unstable. Daniel carefully guided Liam forward, one small step at a time, until they reached a slightly more stable patch of ground. But even here, the danger was palpable. Loose rocks shifted underfoot, threatening to slide, and the wind carried a chill that seemed to whisper through the forest like a warning. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale heavy with tension. The dog barked again, low and warning, and crouched closer to the boy, tail stiff, as if ready to defend him against unseen threats. The girl leaned forward, murmuring, "He's down there. We have to go carefully." Daniel swallowed hard, gripping Liam tighter, and nodded. They had made it this far, but the worst was not yet over. From the shadows below, a faint sound reached them, a whimper small but unmistakable, Liam's voice weak but alive. Daniel's heart leapt and then sank simultaneously. They were close, so close. Yet danger lurked at every step. Loose rocks, uneven terrain, and the ever-present risk of falling made every movement critical. The girl motioned to the dog and it stepped forward, moving with astonishing precision. Daniel followed, carefully placing his feet, guiding Liam over roots and rocks, descending slowly toward the source of the sound. The dog stopped abruptly at a narrow crevice, ears flat, growling low. Daniel froze, knowing instinctively that this was a critical moment. He looked down into the shadowed crevice and saw Liam, small and frightened, wedged between jagged rocks. Relief and terror collided within him. He called out, "Liam, I'm here, stay still, buddy. Don't move." Liam's small hands reached for him, eyes wide with fear and trust. The dog positioned itself between Daniel and the unstable rocks above, hackles raised, guarding them from falling debris. The girl whispered reassurances to the animal, and it responded immediately, body tense and protective. Daniel's pulse raced as he carefully moved forward, shifting his weight inch by inch, until he was close enough to reach Liam. Liam's tiny arms wrapped around Daniel's neck. "Daddy," he cried, relief and terror mingling in his voice. Daniel held him tight, pressing a gentle kiss to the boy's forehead. "I've got you, buddy. I've got you. You're safe now." But even in that moment, the precarious slope reminded him that danger was still very real. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from above, a small slide of rocks and mud dislodged by their movements. Daniel froze, adrenaline surging. The dog growled sharply, ears back, tail stiff, signaling immediate danger. The girl shouted from above, "Watch out! Move!" Daniel reacted instantly, bracing himself, shifting his weight carefully to prevent the rocks from hitting them. Loose debris tumbled past, narrowly missing them. Liam clutched Daniel tightly, shivering, eyes wide. Daniel whispered, "It's okay, buddy. Stay calm. We're almost out." The dog stayed close, nuzzling Liam, ready to defend him at any moment. The girl descended carefully, guiding the dog alongside them. Her small hands moved with surprising strength and precision, helping Daniel navigate the last dangerous stretch. "Almost there," she called, voice calm but urgent. Daniel's muscles burned with exertion, but he pressed on, knowing that they could not stop until Liam was safe. Finally, they reached a more stable ledge. The dog sat close to Liam, ears twitching, body alert. Daniel set his son down gently, though he stayed close, ready to react to any threat. Liam's small body trembled, fear slowly giving way to relief. The girl smiled faintly, eyes bright in the moonlight filtering through the trees. "He's safe for now," she whispered, though her gaze remained on the shadows, alert for any new danger. Daniel realized then that they were not out of the forest yet. The night still held unknown threats, and every step forward would demand vigilance, courage, and trust in the unexpected hero at their side, the dog. Daniel knelt beside Liam, brushing dirt from his face, trying to calm his son. The dog nuzzled against Liam once more, tail wagging cautiously. And above them, the girl looked back at Daniel, expression serious. "We're not done," she said softly. Daniel nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. They had found Liam, yes, but the forest was far from forgiving, and the shadows still held dangers they could not yet see. Every step from here on would be a test of courage, trust, and endurance. And somewhere in the depths of the ravine, the forest seemed to watch, waiting, ready to test them again. Daniel's arms ached, every muscle screaming as he held Liam tightly against his chest. The boy's small body shivered, both from the cold and the adrenaline coursing through him. The forest around them was eerily silent now, as if it were holding its breath, watching. The dog stayed close, low to the ground, ears twitching, ready to spring into action at the first sign of danger. Daniel's gaze flicked to the girl, whose eyes never wavered from the dark ravine ahead. She whispered, "Careful, it's tricky here." The path below them narrowed to a jagged cluster of rocks, slick with mud from the recent rain. Loose stones shifted underfoot, and one wrong step could send them tumbling into the darkness below. Daniel swallowed hard, gritting his teeth. He had navigated dangerous terrain before in his career as an officer, but nothing compared to this. A slippery, unstable slope, his son in his arms, a child and a dog leading the way, and every second stretching like a lifetime. "Daddy, I'm scared," Liam whispered, burying his face against Daniel's shoulder. Daniel pressed a kiss to the top of his son's head. "I know, buddy, I know, I've got you. I'm not letting anything happen to you, trust me." The words felt fragile in the tension of the forest, but he had no choice but to speak them. They had to keep moving. The dog, sensing the urgency, darted forward first, landing on a small outcropping of rock, tail stiff, hackles raised. The girl followed, calling softly to it in a series of commands Daniel didn't understand. And then, almost instinctively, Daniel stepped forward, testing each foothold carefully before committing his weight. Liam's small hands clung tightly to him, a reminder of what was at stake. Suddenly the dog froze, ears flat, growling low. Daniel stopped immediately, scanning the ground ahead. A loose boulder perched precariously above shifted slightly. The dog barked sharply, a warning that made Daniel's pulse spike. "Hold on, Liam," he whispered. "Stay with me, don't move." The girl crouched and murmured to the dog again, and it bounded toward the boulder with precision and confidence. Daniel's breath caught. How could this untrained dog navigate such a dangerous slope so perfectly? Yet, there it was, guiding them, protecting them, leading the way through the impossible. With the dog clearing a path, Daniel carefully descended inch by inch, every movement deliberate. The mud threatened to pull his boots, roots snagged his uniform, and rocks shifted underfoot, but he pressed on, fueled by determination and fear for his son. Liam whimpered softly but stayed close, trusting his father's every step. As they reached the cluster of jagged rocks that formed the base of the ravine, Daniel paused. The dog stood rigid, nose to the ground, tail stiff. The girl leaned forward, whispering instructions. Daniel realized then that the animal was not just following a scent. It was assessing the safest path, predicting dangers invisible to human eyes. "Daddy," Liam's voice trembled, small and fragile. Daniel looked down, meeting his son's eyes. "We're almost there, buddy. Just a few more steps, I promise." Liam nodded, his trust in his father absolute, even as fear coursed through him. The dog barked sharply and darted toward a narrow gap between two rocks. Daniel moved next, carefully lowering Liam, one cautious step at a time, following the dog's lead. The girl's small hands guided them, steady and confident, though her own breath was quick, betraying her fear. Then, without warning, a loose rock shifted beneath Daniel's boot. He stumbled slightly, and a small cascade of stones tumbled down the slope. Liam gasped, clinging tighter. Daniel froze, muscles taut, heart racing. The dog barked fiercely, positioning itself between them and the unstable rocks, its body a living shield. The girl shouted, "Grab him," referring to Liam. Daniel braced himself and moved swiftly, lifting his son higher onto a more stable patch of rock. The dog pressed against Liam, nuzzling him gently, as if reassuring him. Daniel exhaled slowly, muscles trembling, adrenaline flooding his system. Suddenly, a larger section of rocks above them shifted. A small landslide of mud and pebbles cascaded down toward their position. Daniel's eyes widened. He shouted, "Move, now!" The girl grabbed the dog's leash, guiding it to block the falling debris, while Daniel held Liam close, his body instinctively shielding his son. Seconds stretched into eternity. The rocks tumbled around them, dust and mud coating Daniel and Liam, the air thick with tension and fear. And then, miraculously, the cascade stopped. The dog stood firm, body tense but unyielding, as if it had absorbed the danger for them. Daniel's chest heaved. He looked down at Liam, face streaked with dirt and tears. You're okay, he whispered, though every nerve in his body was still on edge. Liam clung to him, eyes wide but alive. Relief began to mix with exhaustion. The girl climbed down carefully, holding the dog's leash. "We did it," she said softly, though her gaze remained alert. Daniel realized she was not celebrating yet. They weren't fully safe. The forest was still dangerous and the night far from over. Daniel took a deep breath, scanning the ravine. The narrow ledge they were on provided temporary safety, but the slope below was still treacherous. They would need help to get fully out. He reached for his radio, voice urgent but controlled. "This is Officer Harris. We've located my son, injured but alive, near the lower ravine. We need ropes and medics now." The forest seemed to echo with silence, as if waiting for the response. Daniel's heart pounded as he hugged Liam tighter. "Stay with me, buddy. We're not done yet. Help is coming." Liam's small voice whispered, "I was scared, Daddy." Daniel pressed a kiss to his forehead. I know. You're safe now. You're okay." The dog nudged Liam gently, tail wagging cautiously, ears alert. Daniel smiled faintly through exhaustion and relief. He realized then that this untrained dog had done what trained rescuers might have struggled to accomplish, finding his son, keeping him safe, guiding them through the impossible. Above them, the girl's eyes scanned the darkness. "We need to stay alert. The slope is unstable. Move carefully when help arrives," she instructed, her voice calm but commanding. Daniel nodded, realizing that they had only survived this moment through a combination of trust, courage, and the uncanny guidance of a child and her dog. Minutes later, the faint sound of approaching voices reached them, other officers, ropes and flashlights cutting through the darkness. Daniel's heart soared with relief, though he stayed vigilant until they were fully rescued. The dog remained close, body tense, as if ensuring Liam remained safe until the last second. Finally, medics reached them, assessing Liam and preparing him for transport. Daniel didn't release his son's hand, tears streaming down his face, relief washing over him in waves. You're okay, he repeated, as medics lifted Liam gently onto a stretcher. Daniel looked at the dog and the girl, awe and gratitude flooding him. They had guided him to his son, protected him from danger, and shown a courage and instinct beyond anything he could have imagined. As they ascended from the ravine, Daniel realized something profound. He had faced danger countless times, but this combination of innocence, loyalty, and instinct had saved his son's life, and he would never forget it. Yet even in this moment of triumph, the forest loomed around them, dark and silent, as if reminding them that life could change in an instant. The dog stayed close to Liam, eyes alert, tail wagging faintly, and Daniel knew that their bond was now unbreakable. The girl smiled faintly, watching as Liam was secured with the medics. "He's safe," she said quietly, almost to herself. Daniel approached her, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you. You saved him." She shrugged slightly, eyes thoughtful. "It wasn't me, it was him," she said, nodding to the dog. "He finds people always." Daniel's heart swelled with emotion, understanding finally dawning. Some heroes weren't trained, didn't wear badges, and didn't seek recognition. They arrived exactly when they were needed, leaving everyone forever changed. And as they finally emerged from the forest, the night still thick around them, Daniel held Liam tightly, the dog at his side, and he realized that this was a story of courage, trust, and the extraordinary bond between a child and her dog, one that had defied logic and saved a life. The clearing outside the ravine was chaotic, yet safe compared to the treacherous forest they had just navigated. Medics bustled around, checking Liam's vitals, wrapping him in warm blankets, and gently carrying him toward the ambulance. Daniel's hands shook as he held onto his son, brushing dirt and leaves from his hair, whispering reassurances that seemed almost unnecessary because Liam's wide, frightened eyes mirrored relief and trust. The dog remained by Liam's side, ears alert, body stiff but protective. Its tail wagged cautiously whenever the boy shifted or whimpered, as if instinctively comforting him. Daniel knelt beside them both, brushing his fingers through the dog's coarse fur. "Thank you," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. The dog nudged Liam, tail wagging slightly, seemingly acknowledging the gratitude without any human need for words. Officers gathered around, flashlights cutting through the dim forest, their faces a mix of awe and incredulity. Many whispered quietly among themselves, questioning how a child and an untrained dog had successfully navigated a slope that had intimidated even experienced rescuers. Daniel barely noticed them. His focus was entirely on Liam, whose small hand clung to his father's jacket, fingers trembling from fear and exhaustion. The girl remained slightly apart, hands clasped tightly around the dog's leash. Her expression was calm, almost eerily so, but her eyes flicked nervously to the shadows of the forest. Daniel finally approached her, gratitude flooding his voice. You saved him. None of this would have worked without you and him. Thank you." She shrugged lightly, eyes serious. "I didn't save him, he did." She patted the dog gently, voice soft. "He can find people, always, that's all he needed." Daniel studied the pair, trying to reconcile the logic of what had just happened. A child and a dog guiding him to his son through impossible terrain, through near-certain disaster. It was extraordinary, surreal, almost unbelievable. Yet here was Liam, alive, trembling but safe, and here was the dog, alert and unwavering, as though it understood the enormity of its own role. The medics lifted Liam into the ambulance, securing him carefully while Daniel insisted on riding with him. As the vehicle began to move, lights flashing and sirens cutting through the night, Daniel glanced back toward the forest. The girl and the dog were still there, small figures against the vast, darkened trees. He felt a surge of respect and wonder, knowing they had orchestrated a rescue that defied every protocol and expectation he had ever known. The ambulance bounced along the dirt path toward the hospital, Liam wrapped in blankets and murmuring softly, the dog following closely outside, keeping pace with surprising agility. Daniel's mind raced with questions. Who was this girl? How had she come to trust the dog so completely? And how had the dog sensed danger, guided them through the forest, and kept them safe? Inside the ambulance, Liam's breathing finally began to even out. "Daddy, I'm really scared," he whispered, voice small and fragile. Daniel pressed a kiss to his forehead. "I know, buddy, I know, but we're almost home. You're safe now. You're going to be okay." Liam clutched him tightly, eyes half closed, still trembling from the ordeal. Daniel couldn't help but marvel at his son's resilience, even at such a young age. Meanwhile, back at the forest's edge, the girl knelt beside the dog, brushing her hands over its fur. Her eyes scanned the darkness, alert for any signs of lingering danger. She murmured to the animal softly, words Daniel couldn't understand. The dog responded with a low, rumbling growl, ears twitching, tail moving cautiously. The bond between them was evident, unspoken, unbreakable, forged through instinct, trust, and necessity. Officers and volunteers began to survey the forest, marking areas where rocks had shifted, noting dangerous slopes, and whispering about the miraculous nature of the rescue. Daniel knew this story would circulate quickly. Social media would buzz, neighbors would speculate, journalists would swarm, but none of it mattered compared to the fact that Liam was alive, and that a child and a dog had defied expectation to save him. The ambulance arrived at Maplewood General Hospital, and Daniel carried Liam inside, breath ragged, muscles sore but relief overwhelming. The doctors immediately checked the boy for injuries, reassuring Daniel that aside from scrapes, bruises, and extreme fright, Liam was physically unharmed. Daniel stayed with him, holding his hand, brushing dirt from his hair, whispering comfort that no words could adequately convey. Hours later, Liam slept soundly under a warm blanket, eyes closed, breathing steady. Daniel finally allowed himself a moment to step outside, the cool night air brushing against his face. He saw the girl standing nearby, dog at her side, small and quiet in the shadows. He approached her cautiously. "You did something incredible tonight," he said, voice low, awestruck. "I don't know how to thank you properly." She tilted her head slightly, eyes thoughtful. "You don't need to. He knows what to do. That's all that matters." Daniel nodded, understanding. The dog shifted slightly, ears twitching as if acknowledging Daniel's gratitude. He felt a strange, unshakable sense of wonder and respect. Some heroes didn't wear badges, didn't seek recognition, and didn't wait for thanks. They arrived at the exact moment they were needed, and then quietly returned to the shadows, leaving those they saved forever changed. As he watched the pair disappear into the night, Daniel realized the story was far from over. Social media would buzz with speculation, friends and neighbors would share every detail, and journalists would descend to retell the miracle. But the part that mattered most, what he had witnessed, the trust between a child and her dog, and the courage that had saved his son, was something that no words could fully capture. Back inside the hospital, Daniel finally allowed himself to sit, exhaustion crashing over him. Liam slept peacefully, safe and alive. The medics had stabilized him, and his parents had been contacted. Relief mixed with lingering fear, the memory of the treacherous forest, the unstable slopes, and the cascading rocks etched into Daniel's mind. He knew he would never forget the terror, the hope, and the extraordinary courage he had witnessed. Hours later, as the first light of dawn crept across Maplewood, Daniel stepped outside once more. The forest lay silent, bathed in a soft, pale light. Somewhere within it, a child and her dog remained, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in deeds. Daniel whispered a silent promise to himself. He would never forget them, never forget the night his son had been saved against all odds. And yet, even in that moment of relief and awe, a shiver of uncertainty ran through him. The girl had disappeared into the shadows as quietly as she had arrived. Who was she? Where had she come from? And how had the dog known with such precision how to find his son? The questions lingered unanswered as Daniel held his son close, heart swelling with relief and gratitude. Somewhere in the forest, a quiet hero watched, alert, vigilant, ready for the next call, the next moment when courage and instinct would be needed again. And for Daniel, Liam, and the small town of Maplewood, the story was far from over. The hospital was quiet now, the chaos of the night replaced by the soft hum of fluorescent lights and distant footsteps in the halls. Liam slept peacefully in his small bed, wrapped in blankets that still carried the faint scent of the forest and the dog who had saved him. Daniel sat beside him, exhausted, body sore, yet unable to stop watching his son. Every rise and fall of Liam's chest was a reminder of the fragility of life and the miraculous events that had unfolded. The girl's words echoed in Daniel's mind. He knows what to do, that's all that matters. At the time, he had dismissed them as the cryptic confidence of a child, but now, in the quiet of the hospital room, their weight began to settle in. She hadn't been boastful, hadn't sought recognition. She had only acted, and so had the dog. Daniel's phone buzzed sharply on the bedside table. A message from Officer Reynolds, one of the search team leaders. "We're compiling reports. Social media is buzzing. Locals are calling it a miracle. Do you have a statement?" Daniel stared at the screen, fingers hovering, unsure what words could possibly capture what had happened. It wasn't just a miracle, it was something unexplainable, something that defied reason. He glanced at Liam, still sleeping, and then at the door, half expecting the girl and her dog to appear once more. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Somehow, he knew the night's events weren't just luck. They were deliberate, precise, and guided by an instinct that humans could scarcely comprehend. A knock at the door startled him. Daniel turned to see a nurse entering, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Harris, your son is stable," she said softly. "Vitals are good. No serious injuries, just scrapes, bruises, and the shock from the ordeal. But there's someone here to see you." Daniel frowned. "Who?" The nurse hesitated, eyes flicking to the hallway. She didn't give her name, just said she was here for Liam. Daniel's pulse quickened. His heart leapt, and a mix of fear and hope surged through him. He pushed himself up from the chair, careful not to disturb Liam, and followed the nurse into the hallway. There at the end of the corridor stood the girl. The moonlight streaming through the hospital windows illuminated her small frame, hair slightly disheveled, eyes bright but steady. Beside her, the dog sat obediently, ears alert, tail moving just slightly, a guardian even now. "Hi," Daniel said, voice tight with emotion. I don't know how to thank you." She smiled faintly, a hint of mystery in her expression. "You don't need to, he knows what to do." She crouched slightly, reaching down to scratch the dog behind the ears. The animal wagged its tail, a quiet acknowledgement, but her words seemed to carry a deeper meaning. Daniel realized then that she wasn't just talking about the dog, she was referring to something larger, something unseen. I just can't believe what happened," Daniel admitted. "No one could have done what you two did tonight. My son is alive because of you." The girl's gaze shifted to the shadows beyond the hospital windows, eyes narrowing as if reading something invisible. "He doesn't always save people, only when it's meant to be." Her voice was calm, almost eerie, yet filled with conviction. Daniel frowned. "Meant to be." She didn't answer directly. Instead, she nodded toward the dog. "He chooses, he knows. He can sense who's in danger and he acts, always." Daniel's chest tightened. The truth of her words hit him in a way he hadn't expected. It wasn't just instinct, it was purpose, intelligence beyond what he had ever known from a dog, guided by an uncanny bond with this girl. And somehow, that bond had chosen his son tonight. Before he could ask more, she turned and glanced toward the darkened hallway leading out of the hospital. "I need to go," she said softly. "He's needed elsewhere." Daniel's eyes widened. Elsewhere, where? Wait. But she had already begun walking, dog following quietly, moving as though guided by an unseen force. Daniel ran after her, calling her name, but the hospital corridor seemed endless, shadows stretching unnaturally around them. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone, vanished into the night with her dog. Daniel stopped, chest heaving, staring into the darkness. His mind raced. Where had they gone? How had they known exactly what to do? The questions swirled, leaving him awestruck and bewildered. All he could do was return to Liam's bedside, holding his son tight, heart still pounding from the events of the night. Later, when the media caught wind of the miraculous rescue, the story spread like wildfire. Social media posts, local news reports, and nationwide coverage hailed the child and the dog as heroes. But Daniel noticed something strange. No one could locate the girl. No one knew her name. No one could provide a description beyond her small stature and youthful determination. The dog, too, seemed to have vanished from the public eye, its heroics documented only in photographs and eyewitness accounts. Daniel's mind refused to rest. He replayed the night in vivid detail, the dog sensing danger, the girl guiding them through the forest, the moments when disaster seemed imminent. Each recollection deepened his awe. Something extraordinary had occurred, and he understood that it wasn't just a rescue, it was something almost supernatural, a convergence of courage, instinct, and unexplainable purpose. Weeks later, Daniel returned to the forest where it had all begun. The trees loomed silently, the shadows stretching long in the early evening light. He walked the paths carefully, searching, hopping to find the girl and her dog again, to understand, to thank them properly. But there was no sign. Only the forest remained, whispering secrets to those who would listen. He knelt on the ground, tracing his fingers over the earth where Liam had been found. A soft wind stirred the leaves, and for a moment Daniel swore he could hear a faint bark, distant yet precise, carrying an almost human intelligence. A chill ran down his spine. Returning home, Daniel held Liam close that night, recounting the story as best he could. "You were brave, buddy," he said softly, brushing dirt from his son's hair. "But the real heroes were the ones who led us, the ones we didn't even expect." Liam smiled faintly, eyes heavy with sleep, murmuring, "The dog." Daniel nodded. "Yes, the dog, and a very brave girl, too." Months later, Daniel still thought of that night often. He never saw the girl again. The dog's whereabouts remained unknown. Yet he could never forget the way they had appeared in the forest, perfectly attuned to danger, guided by some deeper sense of purpose, and saved his son's life. Friends, neighbors, and even fellow officers joked about the miracle dog, but Daniel knew it was more than that. It was instinct, courage, trust, and something he couldn't explain. a bond between two unlikely heroes, one child and one dog, that had defied all logic to rescue his son. And late at night, when Daniel stood by Liam's bed, he sometimes swore he could hear a soft bark in the distance, echoing through the shadows, a reminder that heroes often appear when they are needed most, and vanish just as quietly, leaving wonder, awe, and gratitude in their wake. For Daniel, Liam, and everyone who would hear the story, it was a tale that defied belief, a reminder that courage comes in all forms, and that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are found where you least expect them, guided not by orders but by instinct, purpose, and an unbreakable bond. And somewhere in the shadows of the forest, the girl and her dog waited, ready to answer the call again, unseen yet unforgettable.